Sunday evening across the West Midlands. We welcome you along to the West Midlands Football Podcast from your local TV station, the Birmingham TV channel. I'm Ben Ellis, joined this week by our own Gavin Longthorne to dissect the weekend's action. Dom Phillips will be along momentarily as well. We've just received confirmation of that. So we're going to have a review of the weekend's action, and the exciting stuff was in the Premier League. We're going to come to Friday night, Gav, a bit later on, because even though it's like 8 o'clock on a Sunday, I still think you need a bit more time in order to.
What made you think that?
Well, we'll get to it.
Yeah,
we'll get to it. But we're going to start at Villa Park. Aston Villa 0. Arsenal 1, Saka with the only goal of the game, and we'll get Dom's thoughts on it. But I kind of cut a very frustrated figure at about 2:30 yesterday afternoon, because we're definitely seeing a pattern in against the teams below us and in and around us. We tend to win those games and play very well and don't have any problems at all. Welcome along, Dom. We're just having started the show talking about the Villa game yesterday. We're starting with Villa. So hi, first of all. So we'll come to you on this, and the pattern is definitely emerging, Dom. Isn't it, from a Villa fan's point of view, that against the teams below us and some of the ones that are in and around us, we can play very well. We can control games and win games quite convincingly. Looking at the examples of against Leeds and against Norwich and got a battling win at Everton, and all that evidence is there. Against teams that are above Villa in the table, and this has been happening all season, we've barely laid a glove on these teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been the story of the whole season, I should say. Even the story of last season, I thought what sort of stopped us, especially, towards the end we weren't playing well in general, but early in the season, even though we got a couple of big results, we still could have done better, I think, last season if we got results against bigger teams. And this season it's been more of the same. And I know Gerard talked about it. He saw his press conference already had a go at Des Kelly and was like, well, you've just said things that we all know. And he's not wrong. We all know that we're not very good against the big teams. I think that's the final gap that we have to bridge.
We'll come to that because I think that was a fascinating interview from Steven Gerrard. But the point we're trying to make as well, that yes, Villa are having problems, Gav, against the teams that are above them. I mean, they're barely taking a point. The draw with Man United, having been 2-0 down earlier in the season, I can't think of many other examples.
That was it. Season.
Yeah, and that was coming from 2-0 down to sort of get a point out of the game, which looked unlikely. At the time, the 2 goals went in from Ramsey and Coutinho at the turn of the year, of course. So it's interesting with Steven Gerrard, isn't it, Gav, that he's identified what's wrong. He's also, without naming names, labelled that certain individuals in the squad lack belief. Now, to me, that's a clear sign to the owners going into the summer that I don't want this lot. I didn't come down here for this. And if you want us to go to the levels that you want us to go to, you need to get rid of them and you need to back me with who I want.
Well, I think this is what we actually touched on this a few weeks ago, didn't we? Where he was frustrated. I can't remember the fixture off by heart, but we did talk about this. And I think the thing that you can't quite put your finger on it yet, but at the same time, I think, as you said, the frustration's coming through. It's still not entirely his group of players. I think this is the problem where, especially sometimes where you see it, where managers come in midway through the season as well. I think it's that whole pre-season, the need to build their own squad, need to put that emphasis in there. I did watch the game yesterday. It was very, very frustrating. It was very similar in ways to our game against Arsenal when we played them at home. I think if you had that little bit more about you on the day, I think you could have easily got something out of the game. But it's just annoying because even though the fourth, I think they're a very gettable team at the same time. So I think that's where the frustration comes out. But I'll flip the question on you both. I know that we spoke about it a few weeks ago, but are the same patterns being seen in the same players that we spoke about after that fixture? I mean, obviously saw a lot of comments online saying that if Villa need to go up to that next level, they need to maybe not get rid of the players that have been terrible, but I think sometimes there's players that look very comfortable at the same time. Would that be a fair comment to make?
You go for it, Dom.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a lot to be said about players who don't have. I mean, the one thing that got me about the Arsenal game, it was not the Watford game and the Newcastle game, which are the two examples also stick out where had similar problems. It's the lack of urgency. Where you're 1-0 down at home, especially against Arsenal. You're 1 down at home. You're chasing a goal. Go and take the game to them. It's like Forest in that Liverpool game. I don't know if you caught it. They took the game to Liverpool. And, it worked really well for them. They should have won if not for VAR robbing them. And as for Villa, I think it's not just about players who don't have the urgency or don't have the desire or don't have the belief. I also just think that we have a lot of players who are Dean Smith players who are wired to play a certain way and they're not ready to play Steven Gerrard's way. And I'm going to go out on a limb here because I think an example of that is you've got one of the players in our squad who's got the most heart, desire, belief and battle is John McGinn. But whenever we try and whenever it comes down to passing through a team with pace and picking them apart, he can't do it. It was Douglas Luiz who started in the midfield against Arsenal, and he's the one whose position we're trying to sign in the summer. So it's a really, really interesting problem with Villa. I think it's not just about the urgency and the desire. I think it is absolutely about that. But I think we also need more profile and stature. That's what he talked about after the West Ham game. And we need players that are going to play Gerrard's way.
I thought we were better at West Ham last week than we were against Arsenal yesterday.
Agreed.
And the thing is, what the point is, it's a squad, with the exception of one or two, it's a squad that is predominantly made up of mid-table Premier League players. Now, if Dean Smith was in charge of this squad, it got to a point where they had to make a change. If Dean Smith had these players at Norwich right now playing for him, they'd be in with a shout of staying up, because that's the level. That's the level. Steven Gerrard has come down from Glasgow Rangers, where he spent 2 years. You heard him say he wants to control games. He doesn't want to be on the back foot a lot of the time. He doesn't want to spring counter-attacks. He wants to dominate all of the stats. He wants the possession stats. He wants the XG, whatever that means. Never fully understood. But he wants to be in control of all of the games. So that's what he's had as a manager at Rangers. That's what he had for 85 to 90% of the time playing for Liverpool at Anfield, with the exception of obviously playing the very big boys. Liverpool under Gerard Houllier, Rafa Benitez and Brendan Rodgers and Jurgen Klopp, as you got now, most of the time dominate the games they play, particularly at Anfield. This is what Steven Gerrard is accustomed to. And he's come down from quite a cushy position because he's ambitious and because he wants to do things. And he's identified who hasn't got it. He's looking for players that have got it. And yeah, he won't come out and he won't mention names. And we can speculate as to who he's kind of talking about. But I think you're going to see some well-established names leave this football club this summer. And I think it's going to be a fascinating watch across the summer transfer window at Aston Villa, because Steven Gerrard did not come down from Glasgow to do this job to work at this level. He just didn't do it.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Dom, carry on.
That's all right. Go on, Gav.
I was just going to say, I think you took the words out of my mouth a little bit there, Ben. I think the thing is sometimes we see in the Villa team, as you say, they've got players there that are by no means they aren't the worst footballers in the world. But I think it comes to a point sometimes where I think they've had too much of a crack at the whip, especially if they want to go up a level as well. I think, as I said, the word when I last spoke in this conversation was comfortability. I think there's too much of that at Villa. I think there's certain players that have maybe been there a season too long, and that may have been why Dean Smith lost his job, because he didn't have the, I don't want to sound harsh, not backbone, but he didn't have the tenacity to get rid of them and trial something new. I think the best thing that you've got to do, especially in this league, is you've got to change it when you're doing relatively well. I think if you leave it how it is, that's a mounting pot to stagnate in that league. And I think, as you say, I would not be surprised if you saw a couple of surprise ones leave. I think there's a couple of players there that I think they've hit the ceiling there for sure. Maybe it's not because of ability. I think it's just when players are at clubs, sometimes they've been there so long that it's not going to improve. I just think that's how it is sometimes in football. And as you say, I don't think Gerrard's come down there to be bragging about finishing in the top half every season. I think he does genuinely want to crack on. I think that was the selling point for him. I think he's definitely got something about him because he's brought something out of a player in Coutinho who looked like he was sleepwalking to retirement, with the greatest respect to him. And I think it's going to be interesting to see because Villa have got the financial means to do it. So if they back the goal, it's going to be an interesting summer.
They've got the financial means to do it, as Gav says, Dom. They've also got the name in Steven Gerrard to attract the kind of players that they're looking for. And as I say, I don't think he'll be remotely concerned about making sure players leave. And I think he'll be quite ruthless going into the summer. I was just double checking if what Gav said there, if comfortability is actually a word. I think it is. I think I'll give it to you. I think it is word. I don't know what the Scrabble score would be.
After the weekend of football I've had, I think you can let me have that one.
Well, as I say, we're coming to that.
Yeah.
We're coming to that. Don't you worry. We saw as well. I mean, we're kind of singing the praises, Dom, of Steven Gerrard, the man, as to what he wants to achieve, and he's kind of forthright in where he wants to go. Did he make a mistake yesterday with his team selection? It's been said that for the first half, Villa showed Arsenal too much respect, but did Villa show Arsenal too much respect an hour before the game when the team sheet was announced? Because he kind of had gone to the point where he said to Danny Ings and Ollie Watkins, "You two are my goals. I want you out on the field, and we'll have Coutinho playing behind you." And it seemed to work. And again, yes, we put it in the context of against like the teams that are below Villa in the league who are under pressure and are struggling, like Leeds United, where it worked an absolute treat. Of course, and you are factoring Luke Dini's injury into that as well, in terms of both fullbacks getting forward, which was effective as well. But he switched it yesterday. He went with the two number 10s. He went with Buendia and Coutinho, and that don't work.
No, I don't think it does. And I want an interesting point. It's not just about the two 10s, but I saw this on social media earlier. Is when we first hired Gerrard and we were beating, I mean, he would be like Brighton, Leicester, Crystal Palace. When we had those two 10s, often one of them was Jacob Ramsey or Ashley Young. And Ashley Young and Jacob Ramsey were a lot more defensive players than Emi Buendia or Philip Coutinho. And while Buendia and Coutinho are probably better creators, I just don't think we have the same level of defensive nous in the team now. Like when we played Man City and we played, that second half was the best I've ever seen us play, really, against that level of opposition. We had like Luiz, Sanson and Nakamba all on the pitch, whereas now you're only getting one of them on the pitch. So I just think we're being, with the system, you never get much width. And against Arsenal, we had to go wide at the end by bringing on Bailey and Traore, and it didn't work. So I think Gerrard has learned tactically by, going to the 2-9s, which, again, as you said, wasn't a great opposition, but it did work. And he changed it, and I mean, in hindsight, it's easy to say, oh, we lost, so he shouldn't have done it. But I don't think he should have. I think if it's not really broke, the 2-9s thing, I think he should have stuck with it. It's what we've had our best luck with so far. But equally, in his defence, Gerrard wants to play a certain way, and if the players aren't responding to it, the only way to weed out the ones who can be good enough for it and the ones who are more likely to stay next season is by playing the way he wants to play and seeing who drowns and who floats and who swims. Because I think at this point the season is just about finding who does he want to keep on, who's going to have a bit to play next season, and who's going to be in the shop window come the summer.
I mean, I know this is the West Midlands football podcast, Gab, but should we not pay a bit of credit here to Mikel Arteta for the way he's turned Arsenal around? This is, you think about the starts of the season that they had, and they're in pole position now for a top 4 place, and he gutted that squad. He got rid of all the ones he deemed to be kind of undesirables, and got a lot of criticism for it. You think of Aubameyang and what have you. They looked a really decent outfit yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the fact that, as we said, even though you are doing relatively well, I mean, Arsenal do have higher ambitions with the owners that they got there, but even when they're doing relatively well, finishing in and around the top six, I think you have got to change it sometimes to improve. And as you say, you've got to make those hard decisions, getting rid of Aubameyang, a couple of other players as well, trying something new, bringing players in like Smith Rowe. I think he's just gone with something that he thinks is going to bring him the most consistency, and it's obviously paying dividends for him now. You wouldn't see too many. You wouldn't put money on too many teams putting 3 or 4 past Arsenal now. So I think that shows that he's built something there that's very organised. And for someone, a lot of people would have put down as their bet to be the first man sacked this season. I think he's done a really good job. And if finishing the top 4, then if someone told me on August the 1st that Arsenal will be finishing in the top 4, probably would not have believed you. So as you say, he has done a very good job there. And it showed it again yesterday, where it makes Arsenal a very hard team to break down. So, yeah, credit where credit's due. I think he's done a very good job there.
And talking about the summer, Dom, with what Villa might or might not do, I saw on social media one of the big rumours doing the rounds is a £60 million link with Calvin Phillips. Is Calvin Phillips the type that Steven Gerrard would be looking at?
I'd be shocked if he isn't. We've talked about signing proven winners with Gerrard. I mean, Coutinho and Dino are the 2 obvious examples. And even though Calvin Phillips isn't, Leeds aren't exactly the greatest outfit, they did very well last season. He's England's Player of the Year. He's a mainstay in the England first team, despite only playing for Leeds. And we know what big club bias is like at international level, as we found out with Jacob Ramsey and Max Kilman. I think Calvin Phillips is the kind of player that we need in terms of the position and what he brings to the position, the leadership that he brings as well, the experience that he brings as well, even though he's only 26. Do I think that 60 million is a ridiculous fee? Yeah, I mean, it makes him the most expensive defence midfielder of all time. Rodri was only like 50 million. Fabinho was like 30, 40 million, and they're different class. And while Calvin Phillips is very good, you've got people like Boubacar Kamara going around on the market for free, and Villa have a commitment to sustainability. They have fair play to keep it hold of. So I think there's a balance to strike. If we want to spend big on Calvin Phillips, that might stop us spending big on a centre half or a centre forward if Ings or Watkins leave, or another midfielder, or a right back if Matty Cash might go. Who knows? So I think Villa will have to pick where the big money goes in the summer. Is 60 million a bit much for Calvin Phillips? Yes, but Premier League English players, England internationals, they go for a high premium, and Phillips would definitely plug a lot of holes in that midfield for me.
Absolutely. What we would normally do at this point is look ahead to what's next. It is an international break, and then it's an hour up the motorway to Molineux on April the 2nd. So we will talk about that in more detail at the end of our next segment, which is the West Midlands Football Podcast here on Birmingham TV, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I'm going to come to our resident Wolves fan right now. Gav, 9 o'clock Friday night, everything was hunky-dory. What happened?
I think I was surprised to see a fair few people disagree with me here, but I think a poor refereeing decision caused panic in the team for some reason, and we just seemed to capitulate. I mean, first half was very frustrating. It was a bit of a typical Leeds performance, but we dug in there and we made 2 chances and scored from them, and I think it was a justified scoreline. But as I said, 5 minutes after the second half started, that decision seemed to be made, and I think the referee's got to hang his head in shame at that. I really do. I genuinely do not know what constituted that as a foul. I think if the ball would have been given as a throw-in, that would have been fair. I think it's a 50-50 ball that both players went for. And for some reason, the referee decided to send him off with a second yellow card. VAR, I saw it again in the cup game that's just finished with Notts Forest and Liverpool. I'm getting so fed up of hearing the phrase "not a clear and obvious error." For me, if that technology is in place and you put it down to those finite lines, and it's redundant technology to me, you shouldn't be using it. But that's by the by. Even though there were 10 men down, even though they were down to 10 men, I should say, sorry, I think if you're 19 minutes away from the 90 at home and you're 2-0 up, there is no way that you should be losing the game. And I think, as I said, a lot of panic seems to come through in the team. I think it might have radiated from the crowd somehow as well. But as soon as the first one went in, Ben, I think people who have watched the game as much as we have, and you get a gut feeling when you're in a crowd, we could see that coming. I genuinely do. I think it was just that type of game. I think for some reason after that red card, it was written in the stars for Leeds to win it, but we let them, and it was so annoying because I think the first half, I'll talk to any Leeds fan now and tell them the same thing. I think they were the worst team we played this season. I think they were frustrating at times the way they played against us. But I don't think they come down there to play football. I think they come down there to not lose the game. And they didn't really show a lot going forward. And I think it's just a very, very frustrating night. And I think that's probably why we're not going to finish in a European place this season, because I think this is the third or fourth time now in recent times where we've had that opportunity to break back in the top six. We haven't took it, and we've well and truly blew it on Friday night. And next game coming up now has been made a bigger game because of it. And it's just, I think if this was a game that would have finished this afternoon, I wouldn't have been doing the show tonight because I would have been so angry at what happened. But I don't know if either of you watched it, but I'd like to hear your views on it as well, because I mean, first of all, that red card was disgusting. I'm sorry, I think that was an absolute disgraceful decision for the referee. Second bad one is bed of the week as well after the West Brom one, when he was refereeing that game and he had to apologise to Steve Bruce. It spoiled the game for us.
Dom?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't catch all of the game. I mean, you talk about how bad the second yellow was, but I've heard the first yellow was equally as questionable. I thought the second one, you could have argued that it was a foul, but it would have been a soft foul. To give it to be a soft foul, let alone to give it a second yellow, that's a massive leap. And the idea that VAR doesn't get used for second yellows is apparently a rule that I've heard about. I think that's ridiculous, because it's equal to a red card, so it should be used for red cards, because then that should be overturned, in my opinion. In terms of the actual game, it was like when you came to Villa Park earlier in the season, you 2-0 up cruising, you think it's all over, and after the first goal goes in, you know exactly what's happening.
My sympathy
So I'm glad you've had a
goes out
taste
the
of your
window.
own medicine.
Yeah.
Taste of your own medicine.
I do get what you mean, and I was speaking to a couple of people after the game, and I did make that point. But it's annoying when it's fresh on the brain, and it's annoying when, as you say, you felt that pain earlier in the season, but it shouldn't have happened, really, should it? I mean,
No.
there was no way, even when you're down to 10 men, that shouldn't be happening. I get what you mean, Dom, but I think it's... You see, I've played Sunday League football. I haven't played it in a few years, but if you play Sunday League games, that happens 15 times in a game. Easily,
It's
15
true.
times in a game. It's a 50-50 ball. The goalkeeper, you could argue, was the foul on him, but I don't think it was anyway. I just think... I get that these rules may have been brought in for VAR, but I thought this technology was supposed to come in to improve the game, and that just it ruined the game for one team.
Who told you that?
Well, that's what they say, don't they? But it's just...
It's there to protect
the dodgy sales.
It's there to protect the egos of the arrogant, what's on the field.
But
and nothing more.
But like I say, it's very frustrating. But I sound like a broken record saying it now. But even though that happened, that shouldn't have happened. That scoreline should not have happened. Well, I think the manager's got to take blame for it partially, because I think that's where they earn the money. I think that's where they've really got to start shoring up the game. I think that's where they've got to ease the panic in the team. He came out afterwards, and I'm not going to slag him off too much because he's done a brilliant job this season. He's overachieved from anything that I thought he would have done. But he's come out saying it's proud of the players. Like, I'm sorry, I can't accept that. I think that was dreadful. That was absolutely dreadful to be letting happen.
Okay, we'll come on to Bruno Lage in a sec. I mean, you can't do anything about the standard of refereeing and the interpretation of the technology. As fans, we can't do anything about that. As players, they can't do anything about that. Managers, they can't do anything about that. What you can do something about, particularly from the player's point of view, is the quality of defending for all three of Leeds' goals. Now, the board went up at 2-2 just as Leeds got the free kick, which ultimately led to the winner. 8 minutes of stoppage time, and you heard the Leeds fans, and this is another mistake Wolves make, Gav, is they give far too much room to away support. There's no way there should have been an entire bottom tier of a stand with Leeds fans in it. If you're looking, that's another.
That's all. I've been going down there since 2002, and that's just how it's always been. I do agree with you, but that's just how it's always been.
But anyway, I mean, generally singling out players and stuff like that, Willy Bolly doesn't do enough on that free kick. When the ball's bouncing and bobbling, just get rid of it. And it eventually breaks to Luke Ayling. He scores. It's the worst celebration I've ever seen in my life. When he tries to do that Robbie Keane kind of cartwheel, and he kind of barely gets off the ground, and you just think, oh, God, I really, really hate Leeds United at times. But and I thought as well, not talking about Wolves, I thought the coverage was shockingly biased. I mean, if you were probably at Molineux, so you wouldn't have heard it. It was on Scott. Jamie Carragher was over the moon that Leeds had won this game.
Well, I've heard people on
basically.
I've read people on the Wolves Facebook fan page that I'm a part of basically say that they accidentally thought they turned on an episode of Ted Lasso when they were watching it, because I do agree with you. I mean, this is the thing that we was talking about with Villa. I think there's been a couple of players there now that haven't done anything terribly wrong, but I just think they've been there a season too long. I think Bolly's one of them. I think now with Kilman breaking through, I think it may be time for him to move on. I've spoken about this goal so many times on this show, and I've had so many arguments with Wolves fans about him. But I would gladly drive Dendonka to the next club that he joins, and I don't even have a driving licence. I'm so sorry, but I just do not get it. I've watched the goal. Look, I'll make a beeline to watch the goal now. And that game on Friday night, you've really got to dig in, and you've got to make yourself a presence when that happens. And it's the old losing the ball and then pointing for someone else to win it. It's like having Kevin McDonald back in the team. Like it genuinely is. I mean, too much comfortability, and it is a word. Too much comfortability in that team.
It's a word. I had to check. Yeah, it's a word.
Yeah, but I think now's the time where this goal is proved that he's got something, because he's made something work with a group of players, the greatest respect, aren't entirely his. And he's give us something now, and you can see the change in emphasis in a way, but I think they've got to back him. I think the financial fair play window's finished for us now, so there's a lot more freedom to spend in the summer. So they've got to go out and they've got to sign some proper quality in midfield, and we desperately need another striker now. For some reason, he didn't only come on for 2 minutes, but I don't know why we brought him on in the 97th minute when we were 3-2 down. But I think Fabio Silva's not going to be the answer right now. So I think you need genuine competition for Jimenez in the number 9 department. I just think sometimes you've got to step back and have a look and think, look, if it was top half this season, I think that would be an overachievement. I genuinely think it would this season for us. I think we're not ready for European football again yet. If that team played against somebody like a Sevilla or a Barcelona in the Europa League, I think they would have got tore apart on Friday. I genuinely do. So I think it's still a work in progress, and it's still a mini rebuilding job after Nuno's left. So we'll just see where we go from now. And then we've got this derby after the international break that I'm sure the Villa team don't need a team talk for. So we'll see. It's just on to the next one now.
This was leading up to my question about Bruno Lage, and I'll get an objective view on this from you, Dom. Is Bruno Lage simply this season taking advantage of the foundations that have been laid by 3 years of Nuno?
No, I don't think so. I think he's gone in there and completely revolutionised what Nuno left behind. I mean, Gav was talking earlier about clubs that stagnated, the players who stayed on a season too long. And for me, Nuno was a manager who stayed on a season too long. That game that they played against, I think it was Sevilla who knocked you out in the Europa League that last season.
Yeah,
you were absolutely shocking. By the end of that season, you were just so defensive and slow. You played against Chorley in the cup and looked second best in some areas. And Bruno Lage has gone there, and he hasn't been able to play the full way he wants to play because he wants more of his own players. Yes, but he's completely changed the feel around the club. He's made players play with more urgency, with more quality, play quicker football, more exciting football. And I think he's done really well off a club that Nuno had took into stagnation in a way, because it stagnated. Would any new manager come in and gone on a bit of a bounce? Yes, but I do think Lage has carried that on quite well. I do think, as you say, the game management wasn't very good in the Leeds game. I think Lage has got to look at himself, because as you say, 2-0 up, 19 minutes to go. I don't care if you get 10 men, you should hold on to that. But I think if the board back in, which they should and they have to, then you're on for a really good season next season.
Yeah, and I think as well, people don't get carried away, but I think the 4-0 against Watford, those are the games you're not going to learn from as much as that game on Friday night. I think that if he's a good enough manager and he's got enough about him, he'll treat that as an education on Friday night. And also say as well, Ben, do think it's a semi-fair point what you've made about the foundations that Nuno left. But I'll tell you one thing. If Nuno Santo was still at the club, Ruben Neves wouldn't be playing half as good as he is this season. I think he's definitely...
I think that's a fair point.
He's revitalised his role in that team. I think he's given him a lot more freedom going forward now. And I think he's getting the definite attention. He's starting to fulfil that potential as well that we thought he would do when we signed him 4 years ago. So I think that's where you're seeing little nuggets of what the manager can do. But I think you've got to give him a bit more freedom of his own sign-on players now. I think he's got to get at least 2-3 more players in that his players to give what he wants there. I think it's no secret that we're not probably going to be playing a back 4 under him next season if he does get his own way. So we'll just see. I think it's. I worried half worried at the start of the season, but I think I'm a lot more confident in my thinking with the goal now. So we'll just see next season where it'll bear fruit more.
I think the beginning of the end, really looking back on it for Nuno, I think was that semi-final with Watford. I think Watford were for the taking at Wembley that day, and he kind of like zagged when he should have zigged, or the other way around. Ultimately, would you have wanted to go into a final against a rampant Man City at the time? But it was there to go and get to the FA Cup final, and I don't really think he ever recovered from that. But that's history now. So yeah, we move on to Saturday, the 2nd of April, 3:00 on a Saturday afternoon for a big derby, which is brilliant, absolutely fantastic. So Villa come into town. Obviously, I don't like using revenge with football, but after the 3-2 at Villa Park earlier on in the season, and a point to prove, Dom, after Sunday, would Steven Gerrard would rather this game was this coming midweek or this Saturday, or would he like use of an international break to just recharge the batteries before they go into a big game like that?
I think the international period will give him time to reflect on the recent results. His own, we talked about Bruno Lage not having the best game management at times. I think Gerrard could be guilty of the same with his subs and some of his team selections. So I think he'll look back, he might tweak a few things again like he did after the Watford and Newcastle games. I think that could be very beneficial for the team. But also I want some of those players to go and stew, to be honest. I want them to sit there and have those last couple of games on their mind for the next 2 weeks, and they sit there and they're not happy with it, they're not comfortable with it. And that gives them a drive to go in and put things right against the team who, shouldn't have beat us early on in the season either. So it's a big game. Obviously, we know the locality of it. So I'm happy that it's coming after the international break's coming at a decent time for us. We need a bit of period to look back, get things absolutely spot on, get a few of these players to go, look, you need to play with more urgency, show a bit more desire, and what better game to output that kind of desire than a game against a team like Wolves.
And Gav, the other side of the coin, we talked about the changes that could be made in the summer by Bruno Lage. Is this the ideal opportunity with a break when you've got a brilliant player like Moutinho in the squad, but he is 103 years old? Is this the ideal opportunity to rest up? And he's not a squad full of kids at Wolves. I know we talked about Fabio Silva and that, but there's a lot of late 20s, early 30s in that squad. So will they feel the benefit of the international break before going up against Villa?
Well, yeah, as you say, I think it's no secret that Martino's in the twilight of his career now, is he? So I think it's always welcome when he does get this break. I'm not too sure if he's been picked for Portugal or not. But I think from a Villa side of the coin, I think it's definitely a game, as I said a few minutes ago, it's not one that they're going to do a team talk for. Different managers, same team. So I think they're still going to be hurting from that game. But yeah, I think there's not as many as you usually would in the Wolves squad that have been picked for international duty. So I think there's a chance to work on what happened on Friday night, even though it's not really much of an investigation to be making. But that's by the by. I think it'll be an entertaining game. It's a shame it's not on the TV, considering it's the only West Midlands derby in the Premier League this season. I think that's criminal that it's not on the TV. So I think there's going to be a lot of stream activity going on at that time on Saturday, April the 2nd. But it's
people don't do that, Gav.
Oh no, I never would either.
No, people don't do that.
Yeah, it's terrible.
No.
How could you? How could you even suggest?
It's just disgraceful. But no, I think it'll be a genuinely entertaining game. I think there's going to be two teams there that it's probably going to be mid-table for both of them this season. But I think you're going to see. I know we've got our reputation, but I think it's definitely going to be a game that I think both managers will get them up for. So I think it'll be a good watch.
I think it's a classic case of both Sky and BT don't feel Wolves are going to get into those European places now. It's between top four anyway. I think it's between Arsenal, Spurs, and Man United. I think West Ham will fall away simply because of their workload. But
I think I'm going to get absolutely slaughtered by some people for saying it, but I'd rather finish 8th than 7th, if I'm going to be honest. I don't know what the hell that third European competition is, but I don't want to be part of it. So I think that's just a lot of unwanted Thursday night football for that Europa Conference League thing that Brendan Rodgers didn't even realise that Leicester were in until 2 days before. So
far too much Thursday night football.
Yeah, but
it's even creeping into the Premier League now. So we don't want football on a Thursday. But anyway,
I think you've got to thank Amazon for that. So
yeah. It's the West Midlands Football Podcast. I think it's a Box to Box podcast. That's on Tuesday nights where we all come together nationally to look at the big issues. We talked about nothing but Chelsea the last few weeks on that show. In all fairness, I'm sure it'll be picked up again. But for local matters, we're moving into the Championship now, and West Bromwich Albion have started getting results under Steve Bruce. Who'd have thought? And it's interesting, isn't it? How I don't know how closely you've been following the fortunes of West Brom recently, but it's all seemed to have changed for them on one decision, which was a penalty when they were 2-0 down with 5 minutes to go to Huddersfield at the Hawthorns, which to me, I still don't think it was a penalty. But Carlin Grant scores the penalty. A minute later, Andy Carroll nods it in for a 2-2 draw, and they've just gone from there. I mean, obviously a terrific performance against Fulham. So the top two in the division they've taken points from, and a battling draw on Saturday, coming from behind twice to draw with Bristol City. Ashton Gate's never an easy place to go in the Championship, so it might be a bit late for them, Dom, in terms of a push for the playoffs, but a positive end to the season with Steve Bruce starting to get his feet under the table. Then they can reassess. They can look at what they need to do. Obviously, there's going to be, I think there'll be quite a big turnover of players in the summer at the Hawthorns, but at least they can go into that feeling positive if they can keep this run going.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that Steve and Gerard talked about is that having a good end to the season means you can get better players in the summer. And I think West Brom could benefit off just the exact same thing. You know, I've been one on here, I've not been particularly positive about Steve Bruce or his appointment and stuff like that. But credit where credit's due, they've got a big result against Huddersfield, as you say, and then they've rode the crest of the wave since. And I think Baggy's fans, especially, they just needed a few wins. They needed a bit of confidence in the team. The players needed it. The fans wanted to see it. So, you know, I'm happy for them that they're, you know, getting a few results. As you say, I mean, at 12th at the moment, promotion doesn't seem likely. I mean, Luton are one that could go up, which I think is a crazy one because Kenilworth Road in the Premier League would be box office. But it's good. It's good to see them doing well. As you say, there's a lot of players that could leave in the summer. What kind of profile Bruce goes for will be interesting to me. Because for me, historically, he's had a tendency to go with some of those older players who you might feel like you can rely on more, but then the issue is they come on bigger wages and how that might work for the club financially. Or do they go for younger players? Where are they going to get them from? So there's a few questions as to what kind of way Bruce wants to construct his side, but I think a few wins will only bring the club a bit more together, pull the owner, the fans, the players, and the manager all close together, get them on the same boat, and that can only be a good thing to have going into next season. Can't hear you, Ben.
Sorry, I'm on mute. My mistake. My mistake. You might remember a couple of weeks ago, Gav, we were talking with Jonathan about a fixture clash between Wolves, Villa and Blues, West Brom. And we said one of those games will likely be moved. We were hoping it'd be the Villa game for TV, but no. They've moved Blues against West Brom to the Sunday, the 3rd of April, 3 o'clock kickoff. Blues is a funny one, you know. I mean, I was there last Saturday against Hull. Oh, yeah. Hull to run with dull. Quite frankly, there wasn't a shot on target in the match from either team, and then a really disappointing performance against Middlesbrough in midweek, 2-0 defeat at home. That the old Blues had crept back in after having a bit of a positive run. 0-0 draw on Saturday at Swansea. I don't know if you've seen the highlights of this. 3 absolute sitters that Blues missed in the game, and a point on the road in the Championship, wherever you get it's a good result. But I don't know, Dom. Lee Bowyer must after every game just look, whatever the result, just think, what's going on here? What kind of a team have I got here? What kind of players have I got here? That I just can't seem to get a handle on them, and I think, there'll probably be some more changes in the summer and what have you, but you just don't know with Blues, do you?
No, I don't think he feels he can rely on those players, which I find to an extent concerning because I know he's signed a bunch of them. That being said, some of the players like Christian Pedersen and Gary Gardner, Ivan Sunjic, they aren't his signings. Or if they were there a few years ago and haven't worked out and haven't had a chance to move them along yet. So I think he cuts a frustrated figure in Birmingham at the moment, Lee Bowyer. I think he's got some good players in, like Lyle Taylor. You've got some of the United loanees are quite good. To Heath Chong's come back into the side, and I think he's going to help them. But as you say, you're going to be frustrated with those players. The summer's going to have to be another summer of change for Blues. I do think Lee Bowyer is gradually making that squad better. I think he's actually impressed me, to be honest, in recent weeks with how the team, I feel like he's sort of like Gerrard in the way he's identifying problems and he knows what they are. He just doesn't have the time to change them because it's still in the middle of the season. And I think he's giving some players chances to redeem themselves. So, yeah, I think Birmingham could have a better season, one that they thought they were going to have earlier on. But next season, I know that players will, they say, we could have had that a few seasons ago. We've been saying that every season now. But I think Lee Bowyer's finally getting a grip and eventually in the summer will have a proper handle on his own squad because the unluckiness can't run on for another season, you don't think?
One player who is catching the eye, Gav, is Arnaud Hernandez for Birmingham City. He's playing in it's either a left winger role or a wing back role, depending on the formation that Lee Bowyer wants to go. I mentioned the game against Hull last week, which I was at St Andrews. They started with a 3-5-2 with wing backs, and it wasn't for the lack of trying. But there were problems within the midfield, which meant the 3-5-2 didn't work. But Hernandez was trying to get forward as much as he could. Went to a back 4 in the second half, and he would link up with Pedersen down the left-hand side. And a lot of Blues' chances were fashioned that way. One of the sitters that was missed on Saturday at Swansea was through the work from Hernandez. Now, it's a tricky situation for Blues, isn't it, when you've got these players on loan. They're sent on loan to get experience in the Championship. And the better they do, if they tear it up, you're not going to keep them. So it's a difficult one. But he's I don't know how much you've seen of Blues, but Hernandez has definitely caught the eye as far as I'm concerned. I don't know about you.
Well, yeah, he's one of a couple. I mean, Don mentioned him. I think Lyle Taylor was a very, very clever signing. I think he's someone that's definitely going to give him something in that league. Hernandez has got that bit about him where I think he can create chances for Blues, as you said, a la yesterday with the City he created. he does show flashes of something that can do it. I mean, Chong is a funny one. I don't know whether he's going to stay or if Man United are going to move him on somewhere else. It's disappointing for the fans because I don't think he was so much a standout player, but I've mentioned him before. You got someone that looked consistent and solid at the back three from in Sanderson from Wolves, and he got recalled just to be loaned out to a higher team in the Championship, which I don't think I don't get how that's allowed, but that's by the by. I think it's just a case of it is what it is, and I think the season's always what it was going to be for Blues. I think they were never going to be in danger of going down, as I've said so many times before. I always think it's absolutely criminal when the fans blame Bowyer because I don't think there's much he can do with what he's got there and what he has done. He's made as consistent as possible with the group of players he's got there. It's a funny one, really. I mean, it's what are they going to be expecting in the summer? I don't know. I think it's a very funny one, really. As you say, you've got teams like Luton that are up there challenging for the top six. So nothing's beyond the realms of possibility in that league. But you've got a couple of star-ish players there that aren't their players. And who are they going to bring in and who are they going to lose? I mean, there's already talks of Jude Bellingham's brother Job getting a lot of attention as well, isn't there? When he's been one of the breakthrough players from this season, which is a shame because they do fall in that category, Blues, where I think if they do get a star player come through that's theirs, it's always going to be a struggle to keep them, especially the situation they're in at the moment. I don't know. I mean, I could ask you two this. I don't know what I'm going to be expecting from Blues in the summer. I really don't. Well, being a football fan, it would probably tell you it's going to be a lot of the same as this season, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be honest with you. I definitely think people are campaigning for them to be sold, but I don't know who's going to come in and buy them. And I don't know where the investment's going to come from. So it might be a lot of loan signings and clever little pickup signings again, like Lowell Taylor. I'm just not knowing what to expect from the close season.
Well, what they've done is they've appointed a couple of English or even local people, Brummies, into quite high-profile positions at the club. So the new managing director is a Blue Nose through and through. There's the role Craig Gardner's playing. It's kind of like a director of football kind of role. In that, so the fans kind of get on board with that, and they say, okay, so at least we're getting some kind of communication from the club now, people who understand the club, and yes, we can kind of move forward from there. I mean, you say, Gab, that they were never in any danger of going down, but I would argue, and I'll bring Darwin on this, if Derby and Reading hadn't had their points deductions, they would be right in it.
I think that's where it comes from, though, doesn't it?
They would be right in it. Now, I mean, Derby should have 46 points. They've earned 46 points this season, but they're sitting on 25 at the bottom of the table. And Blues fans thinking, okay, we can relax for the rest of the season. If they were right in it, that result Peterborough got at QPR today could have really put the cat amongst the pigeons. So in terms of the league table, they can relax. Of course they can, because they're not going to get caught. But it doesn't mean their problems are over, does it, Dom?
No, I agree. And I think that's what Gav sort of said, is that as a football, I don't think you ever really know what's going to happen with Blues. Whenever you think that, they might do well here, they're going to get into the playoffs, then they look mid-table. Then when you think, they might be in danger of slipping down, as you said, I know they've been helped by the Derby and Reading point deductions, but they're probably not on the level of a side that you would see going down. So it's one of those things where it depends on, does Bowyer lose patience with the club hierarchy? I know they've got, some people who are more willing to communicate with fans than previous people in those positions, and those people higher up at the club. But if he doesn't get backed, if he doesn't get his players, if some of these problem players persist to still be there, and it's a bit of a closed door for Bowyer as much as it is the fans, then he doesn't want to abandon the club, but equally he's more than entitled as a manager to go his own way. And some of these players might want to go their own way. They might want to move up. Some of these young loanees who have done well, like Wolves did with Dion Sanderson, some of those young players will end up playing at a higher level. So then they're left high and dry, and you just never know what's going to happen, because equally they could have a good window. Bowyer might stay, and then who knows? So it's a really unpredictable club for me, Birmingham are.
So West Midlands Football Podcasts here on this Sunday evening. We're going to wrap things up shortly, but we're moving in to League Two now, and we said it a couple of weeks ago here on the show that this is some appointment from Walsall with Michael Flynn, isn't it, Dom? I mean, he's really come in there and he's really shaken them up. in a 1-1 draw with Harrogate yesterday. But he's been getting results against some of the bigger teams in that league. And if you hear him talk as well, he talks like a football manager, which it kind of sounds strange that should be that should be a quality that you're looking for. But he sounds like he really is in charge of this group, and for that level, we know the job he did at Newport. As I said, this is a fantastic appointment, and from being extremely worried in the latter days under Matty Taylor, hunky dory now for Walsall.
Yeah, it is. I remember saying on the podcast when he was appointed, I think they're punched above their weight here, and they've got someone really good. And even though, they've got some really big results that you might not have seen them getting before, but equally they haven't just started winning every week, and that reflects that these things take time. He needs players in, he needs transfers, he needs time to coach these players, get them playing his way, get them believing, because that's what they need. They need confidence and they need belief, and you can see that seeping into Walsall more and more every week. It's sort of like West Brom, that you feel like the cohesive units, the fans, the players, the manager, all these people, all these forces, they're all going together and they're pulling in one cohesive direction, and that can be seriously difficult train to stop. So I think Walsall fans have every reason to continue being excited, and I think it's down to the club to have a really good transfer window in the summer, and then I think the sky's the limit for them next season.
Disappointed for them in the end yesterday, Gab, obviously at Harrogate. It was like the 94th minute when Harrogate equalised. So it's the kind of, you've drawn the game and you feel like you've lost the game. But as I say, the good thing about League Two is that international breaks don't count. And Walsall will be in action this weekend coming, and that's an opportunity for Michael Flynn to get into the players. They're going to Salford, going to Gary Neville's mob, and see if they can push on and have a good strong end to the season.
Yeah, not an easy place to go to, that game against Salford. It's disappointing for them against Harrogate yesterday, but I think the way it seemed to be not so much declining, but going star under Matty Taylor, I think that would have been a game that they probably might have lost 2-1 under him. So I think that's definitely where you're seeing that little bit about Michael Flynn coming in. I think he's, like you say, it's a very, very good appointment. He's been there, done it in that league for a few years. He knows how to get up to that higher part of the table, and he knows how to grind out results at that level. I think it's not just an appointment for the second half of the season to get them closer to mid-table and away from that bottom two. I think someone at Walsall's seen that is available, gone for him, and it's something that can be somebody that can be used for the next 2 or 3 seasons. I mean, as Dom says, if they get it right in the transfer window, in the close season, I think you could see a very interesting 8 or 9 months for Walsall next season. I really do. I think they've got a good coach there, and I think the fans know it as well from what I've read. So interesting to see. It'd be nice to see them as an improvement rather than slowly going down Walsall, because they're always the team that we look out for second on a Saturday, don't we? So no, good result. I mean, it's just, as you say, disappointing for the late nature of it, but I think at that level going away, I think you always take a point. So no, it's definitely showing signs of improvement there for them. So good stuff.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great if we could get Solihull Moors into the Football League?
Yeah.
Next season. I mean, great game yesterday. 5-3 in that game. We haven't got time to discuss it, so Moors fans do apologise. Just quickly before we go, are we in any way bothered about the internationals this coming week? The problem when you've qualified is that while the playoffs are going on, you've got to have friendlies, haven't you? So Switzerland, I think, isn't it, on Saturday?
Well, it's for me, it's never been the priority. I think even now, I think it's slightly better under Southgate, but I still think it is a bit of a blue or boys club in a certain sense sometimes. I mean, I'll ask you two opinion on this, really. Actually, I half think it was criminal that Kilman didn't get picked in this squad. I really do. I think you probably seen. I think we know the reasons why he didn't, but I think he would have been at least a go, considering that the 2 friendlies as well. I think it would have been worth at least trying. I don't know. I'll just get your two opinion on it. Really, what do you think about that? Considering the season that Maguire's had, also.
I think it's difficult because I think that one of the things that we've praised Southgate for is building a squad of people who are very close together, which is something we've never had at England before. And a lot of that is that he always picks very similar squads so they're going to spend a lot of time together, play together a lot, train together a lot, they talk together a lot, and that's built the cohesiveness. However, I definitely think people like Max Kilman should be given a chance for these kind of friendlies because that's how you up the quality of the group. That's how some players like Maguire I don't think Tyrone Mings deserves to be in there myself. Taking them out might give them the boost that they need because, you look at Tyrone Mings and I look at Fikayo Tomori, who's been absolutely outstanding for AC Milan, who are top of the league. There is no way that he should not be in the World Cup squad. There is no way that he should not be in every single England squad. I do think Kilman should be in there, but if you had to pick one centre-back who should have got the call, it would have been Tomori for me. But I definitely think more squad experimentation would have been useful. Ben Southgate talked about the Jacob Ramsey stuff and he said he's against Conor Gallagher. Did you think that was a fair explanation or do you think the kid deserved a pop?
Oh, it's a complete load of rubbish. Quite honestly, Conor Gallagher has had a great season for Crystal Palace. There's no doubt about that. He's been influential in them obviously getting to an FA Cup semi-final. I think the way Everton played had a lot to do with that today, but that's another matter for another discussion, maybe for the Merseyside version of this podcast. But he didn't do a lot on loan at West Brom, and there's obviously the Chelsea situation going forward if he goes back there. Jacob Ramsey doesn't have that kind of upheaval or anything. He can just concentrate on playing his football, and I think it's almost a problem for Gareth Southgate. It's almost an embarrassment of riches when he's got his settled team. It doesn't matter who he's going to bring in, who he wants to have a look at, because the first game in Qatar, whoever that's against, it's going to be, providing they're fit, it's going to be Calvin Phillips and it's going to be Declan Rice, and they're going to sit there. And he's not going to deviate from that. So then what do? Do you drop Mason Mount, for instance? He's not going to drop Mason Mount, is he? In those kind of midfield areas, you're going to turn your back on the likes of Phil Foden, who is technically a midfield player, a winger. I know Man City don't have any strikers, so it's almost an embarrassment of riches. It's very, very difficult to break into the England squad, and people like Matty Cash, for instance, repatriate themselves to Poland because they're not going to get in ahead of the likes of Kieran Trippier. So So Gareth Southgate has to be the politician and have something to say to the media. The question is, unless he gets a glut of injuries, he's not even going to think about the likes of Jacob Ramsey. Not with the World Cup coming up. He's just not going to think about it. And you can be as upset and you can be as miserable as you like. But the good thing about that is because it's so settled with England, you're not likely to lose your players. They're not going to leave your club thinking I want to play for England, because the England setup is, like we said, it's very settled. There's no danger that Villa could lose Jacob Ramsey. We're going full circle, and we talk about the contract situation with Kylie Chukwuemeka, which seems to be breaking down, which we probably should have mentioned earlier. But if he wants to break into international level, he's going to have to sort out his future going forward. Jacob Ramsey just has to keep sort of doing what he's doing to the point where Gareth Southgate can't ignore him. Whether that gets him in, who knows? We know how much of a drama it was from a fan's point of view trying to get Jack Grealish into the squad, into the team even. Something we obviously know that he's gone to City we don't really care about, but there was a lot of uproar about that. The important thing is don't take it as a front to your club and your team if one of your players doesn't get picked. Because it really doesn't matter.
Sometimes, Ben, though, it's not.
It doesn't matter.
It's not even from a Wolves point of view, really. I mean, look, all you fair and as down the middle as they come. The one that went under the radar a lot, which Dom actually really well put, was Tomori. Look, he's had an outstanding season for AC Milan. You don't see him a lot because it's not under the radar with the Premier League as much in Kilman. I don't think he's had a terrible season, but how does Mark Gay from Crystal Palace getting over those two? That's the thing that confuses me a lot. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not a football manager at international level, so I maybe not seeing things that he is. But yeah, it's confusing one. Confusing one.
Coming full circle, and we'll end on this talking about Dom. You don't think Tyrone Mings should be in the squad? Tyrone Mings could be one of those high-profile names that leaves Villa Park this summer. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Steven Gerrard just got the axe and just said, "You gone." And I don't care if you go somewhere else and you do well, and you're not what I'm looking for here. I think you going forward, you're going to see more of a player in concert, and Callum Chambers as well at the back. Right, I was disappointed Callum Chambers was out of the side yesterday. To be honest, when that team was mentioned, but we're going over old ground because we have in fact come to the end of the West Midlands Football Podcast, the Box to Box podcast. We'll be looking at things on a national level. Should be around about 8 o'clock on Tuesday evening. Whether we're here next week, because there's very little to talk about, I don't know. But obviously keep a look at Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. For Dom Phillips, for Gav Longthorne, I'm Ben Ellis, and enjoy your football in the week ahead. Goodbye.